Hi and welcome to Dear Andy, where every week at SI.com we answer your college football and irrational hatred questions. We got some good ones this week, so here we go. Our first question comes from Kevin, and he asks, will this year's national champion have 2 losses? Kevin, I doubt it. Just because there's going to be a playoff doesn't necessarily mean that a team with 2 losses is going to go all the way to the title. But I can see that as a possibility, and here's how. Take 2012, for example. If Notre Dame does in 2014 what it does in 2012 and no one else is undefeated, Notre Dame's probably the 1 seed. That schedule was not bad. People look at the way Alabama beat Notre Dame in the national title game that year and assume that the Irish stunk. That wasn't the case. They would be the 1 seed. Now, when we did our mock college football playoff selection more than a year ago, we used the 2012 data. And these real athletic directors who we had doing it were seriously considering Stanford and Texas A&M that year. Now, there were a bunch of good one-loss teams that ended up making it instead. But let's say there weren't a bunch of good one-loss teams and you had great 2-loss teams like Stanford from that year or like Texas A&M. Texas A&M by the end of that season was playing about as well as anyone. Stanford, after they switched to Kevin Hogan at quarterback, got a lot better. So what happens? You get a 4 seed that nobody wants to play if you do that. So if Texas A&M had made the playoff that year, if Stanford had made the playoff that year, I don't think Notre Dame wins. I know Notre Dame had beaten Stanford at home earlier that season, but that was a controversial finish at home. Neutral site, Stanford playing better, Stanford probably wins that game. So in that situation, now you've got a 4 seed, a 2-loss team, playing for the national title with momentum. It is certainly possible. And guess what? There's a playoff now. You are going to have to get used to the possibility that a 2-loss team can win the national title, and you also need to consider the possibility that the team with 2 losses that played a tougher schedule might be the best team. Our next question comes from Clark, and he asks, Dear Andy, Bob Stoops speaks his mind, trash talks a little, and gets bashed. Steve Spurrier does the same thing and the media loves it. What gives? Well, I think you're reading too many Alabama fans' Twitter feeds, because I don't think Bob Stoops got bashed for going off on Nick Saban calling Oklahoma's Sugar Bowl win a consolation game, or for making fun of Texas A&M's non-conference schedule. That both of them were legitimate beefs by Bob Stoops. Now, I don't think he has scoreboard on Texas A&M since the Aggies crushed the Sooners the last time they played, but hey, he definitely does against Alabama. So I don't think people were getting on Stoops so much. But Spurrier tends to do it with a little more style. Now, Stoops is getting better though. And let's remember, who do you think Bob Stoops learned his trash talking technique from? It wasn't Hayden Fry, and it wasn't Bill Snyder. It was Steve Spurrier. Remember, Stoops was Spurrier's defensive coordinator for a national title team in 1996, and then for 2 more years at Florida. A lot of what Bob Stoops does in terms of program building, he learned from Steve Spurrier, and that includes gigging folks. And while we're on the subject of Oklahoma, here's one from Harry. And he asks, any chance Oklahoma is this year's team that played really well in the bowl game and that's all we remember? Ah yes, the West Virginia Memorial Bowl bump, as we like to call it. You remember when West Virginia thrashed Clemson in the Orange Bowl? Remember how we thought they were going to be awesome the next year? Remember what happened when they went to Lubbock? You got to be careful when the last thing you remember before a long and boring offseason is a tremendous, somewhat out of character bowl performance. That is the concern with Oklahoma, which is this year's trendy top 5 pick. Now, we know Alabama's pretty good. We know Oklahoma dominated the second half of that game. I was at both of Oklahoma's losses last year, to Texas and to Baylor. They didn't look anything like they looked in the Sugar Bowl. So the question is, which team is it going to be? Is it going to be that Sugar Bowl team, or is it going to be the one that played the whole season? It might be that they just needed some time to get their stuff together, and what you saw in the Sugar Bowl is what they're going to be. But it might be that they played one really good game. I wish I could give you a more definitive answer, but I don't have to predict where teams are going to finish anymore, and frankly, I'm very happy about that. And speaking of my spotty track record of predicting where teams will finish and generally ranking them in the wrong order, our last question comes from Dave. Why do you hate my team? Well, Dave, I don't hate your team nearly as much anymore. Martin Rickman is taking over the power rankings for me this year. He hates your team now. I'm generally ambivalent towards your team. That's about the best I can do. But while we're on the subject, a few programming notes for what to expect from SI.com in the fall. Dear Andy is expanding. It won't just be a video mailbag come the season. There will also be a written portion. Yes, I do still remember how to type. Also, on Monday mornings, I'll be wrapping up the college football weekend that was, and on Thursdays, we'll bring back the walkthrough with a special emphasis on what's on the menu for the next weekend, on the field and on my plate. For SI.com, I'm Andy Staples.